We all know that sticks and stones can break bones, but can they affect the outcome of one of the most important legal actions, certainly in recent history? I'm joined once again by Larry Klayman. Larry, thank you for joining me on this Saturday. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm interested to hear what's going on. I think a lot of people are seeing sort of chatter, I guess you'd call it, in social media. What has been going on lately, Larry?
I think I will call this show the real stone cold truth because here's the bottom line, and I'm going to go through this so people understand it and they can research it and they can verify it because what I'm going to tell you is the truth. Number one, my client, Jerry Corsi, is not out to harm Roger Stone. To the contrary, he testified truthfully to the special counsel, Robert Mueller. That's the reason he's not indicted. Roger Stone allegedly did not testify truthfully to the House Intel Committee and threatened to witness Randy Credico and his dog. The way I saw it, he threatened them with death, and that's why Roger Stone is indicted. Now, Jerry never said that he wanted to testify against Roger Stone, but he could be subpoenaed. In fact, he's person number one in the indictment. So he is a material witness. So is Randy Credico. He's person number two. But Roger is attacking my client, in my opinion, for two fundamental reasons. One, he thinks that's going to exonerate him, makes him look good, and he's trying to intimidate a witness from telling the truth if he's subpoenaed. And that factors into the indictment itself, because the indictment talks about witness tampering, intimidation, and threats. That's a crime. So Roger's doing himself a tremendous disservice because he's compounding the issues and the matters that he was indicted for. But he's also doing it because he fears that Jerry Corsi, who has to raise a legal defense fund too, he's doing that at CorsiNation.com, is going to take money away from his legal defense fund. And that's why you see him all over television now with his surrogates like Mike Caputo, and I'm going to explain that in a second. In fact, raising money on Tucker Carlson, last night and elsewhere, because this is a money-making venture for Roger Stone, and it's not the first time. Now, let's back up, because I want to give the story of Roger Stone as I know it. Now, I've been in Washington now, you know, for almost 42 years. I'm a seasoned trial lawyer. I'm a former Justice Department lawyer. I helped break up AT&T. I founded Judicial Watch back in 1994, left to run for the U.S. Senate in 2003 and 2004 in the Republican primary as an independent Republican and the real Republican. And then when I came out of that, I started Freedom Watch, and I've been doing that and also practicing law as a private practitioner. I'm a columnist on WND.com and on Newsmax.com. I wrote a book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. And I might add, there's a chapter in there which deals with my political times running for the U.S. Senate about Roger Stone. Now, let me back up. Roger Stone was my campaign manager for about 2 weeks before we parted ways. But let me get back to the chronology here, because people need to understand that. Is that Roger Stone, back in the 1980s, along with Charlie Black, Paul Manafort, himself, and Kelly, I forget Kelly's first name, and Rick Gates later became a partner in that firm, was a political consultant which would try to elect Republican presidents, and then once they were elected, call in the chips and lobby with them for big money, a lot of money. And Roger Stone and his partners became millionaires doing that. They, in effect, invented that. Get a president elected, then call in the chips, trade on that. Never mind that it's a conflict of interest because no such thing exists in Washington, D.C. Those were all before the ethics laws, which prevented some of these things. And still they're done in any event and violated by, you know, many of the political consultants in Washington, D.C. But that's how I met Roger Stone, because I read an article in Time magazine which talked about this law firm. And I was up and coming as an international trade lawyer, and I really liked Jack Kemp, the congressman from Buffalo, New York, a former quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. And I called up Roger and I said, let's have lunch. I'd like to try to help Jack Kemp, because I saw that he was supporting Jack Kemp as well as his partners, with the exception of Lee Atwater, who was supporting George H.W. Bush at the time. And we had lunch, close to the White House. And I said, I'd like to help. And Roger said, well, I can get you probably on the campaign finance committee of Jack Kemp, and which he did. We were both in our early 30s. And in fact, Donald Trump was on that finance committee too, as well as Norm Brayman, who was the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, and others. And that's our first acquaintance. I became close to Jack Kemp. I really loved him. He was someone who believed in bringing in diversity to the Republican Party. He believed in free trade. I believe in free trade. I was an international trade lawyer practicing that, representing a lot of foreign companies and U.S. importers. And that was how I initially met Roger Stone. Now, years later, at the Republican convention in 1996, where Bob Dole was nominated to be president and Jack Kemp vice president, I was literally tearing over as I was watching Kemp's speech. I wasn't, all that big on Dole. I mean, he's an establishment Republican. I didn't hate him or anything, but I didn't think he was going to be a great president. But I did love the fact that Kemp was on the ticket. Roger Stone got himself into trouble because he was photographed at a toga party with his wife, allegedly, wearing a toga. And then pictures showed up on the internet, allegedly him soliciting foursomes with people, other couples. And Roger asked me to help him because packed in front of his house was hard copy and all these other tabloids trying to destroy him. And I came in as his lawyer, and I scared them away. I threatened them appropriately. And basically, I saved his derriere at that point in time. He was the answer, the Democrats' answer to Dick Morris, who got caught with a prostitute at the Jefferson Hotel while he was one of President Clinton's campaign advisors and had to resign. This was the retaliation for that by the Democrats. Now, fast forward years later, as I was leaving Judicial Watch, I decided to leave to run for the U.S. Senate in 2003 and 2004. My home state is Florida, and Senator Bob Graham was retiring. There was an open seat, and that gives an opportunity, because incumbents rarely lose, at least in those days, to run for the U.S. Senate. I had run Judicial Watch for about 10 years, and I felt it was time to move on and do something else. Frankly, I wanted a little sun. It's kind of depressing and dark in Washington, D.C. It's cloudy and overcast and cold frequently.
Yeah.
And I love Florida. I mean, that's just a fact. So I think, wouldn't it be great to take the concept of Judicial Watch inside of the U.S. Senate? I literally could have my law firm inside the U.S. Senate. Being that it's the third biggest state, I'd have over 100 people working for me, which was more than I even had at Judicial Watch at the time. And a friend of mine who I got to know through Jack Kemp, Scott Reed, who had been a deputy to Haley Barbour at the Republican National Committee, had become chief of staff to Jack Kemp when he was made the cabinet secretary by H.W. Bush at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I said, how do you think I should run? How should I position myself, Scott? Scott's a good guy, by the way. And Scott said, well, why don't you use Roger? He's down there in Florida. He lives in North Miami Beach or Fort Lauderdale, whatever you want to call it, and he understands the lay of the land. And I knew I would be going up against the Bush machine because President W. Bush at the time wanted a Hispanic to run for the Senate. That was a Karl Rove idea, to get votes for him so he could be reelected in 2004 because Florida became heavily Hispanic during that period between 2000 and 2004 when he was elected and, filled out his first term. So Roger was somebody who doesn't like the Bushes, and he would stand up to the Bushes.
Yeah.
So, I went with Roger and I met with him actually at a restaurant right outside of his apartment at the plaza, near the plaza in New York City, because he had that as well as his house down there in Florida. And I said, Roger, if you represent me, number one, you cannot pull any dirty tricks. I'm Larry Klayman. I'm the ethics guy from Judicial Watch. You have to play it straight, okay? I don't know what you've done in the past, if anything, but, your reputation is such that, you might do things that people would construe incorrectly as unethical and inappropriate, not on my campaign. And you have to be exclusive to me. You can't represent anybody else. And Roger agreed. So I decided to work with Roger to be my campaign manager. I mean, he does understand politics. I give him credit for that. And he has been involved in campaigns before, and he was recommended by Scott Reed. But no sooner than a few weeks into the campaign, he brought in all of his friends, okay, to run the campaign. And I took my severance from Judicial Watch and used it for the campaign, thinking that, someday I'll be able to repay myself. But he brought in these people like Mike Caputo that you see on TV as a so-called press secretary. And then I found out in the course of it that he told me he was leaving to go upstate New York because his father was sick. No, he was leaving because he was also representing, if you can believe this, I found out, Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton wanted to run for the presidency. So he violated his agreement with me to be exclusive. And how would it look for a conservative candidate to running for the U.S. Senate in Florida to have his campaign manager also representing the despicable Al Sharpton? And obviously he was doing that for money and for positioning. Maybe he thought that would hurt Hillary Clinton or whoever. But whatever the case was, we parted ways. And when that happened, people like Caputo, who had been paid money, obviously, on the campaign to do work, and others, he brought in all of his friends. They took computers that I purchased, cell phones that I purchased at my expense, and exit stage left. From that point forward, I could have sued Roger then, but I didn't because I had to stay focused on my campaign. And I had to do what I had to do to keep my head afloat. And as a result, I haven't talked to him for 15 years, not at all. Now, fast forward, Jason, to today. Jerry Corsi asked me to represent him. I know Jerry Corsi a long time. He's an honest man. People call him a conspiracy theorist, but you know what conspiracies happen? No offense with the French, but SH, you know what happens, okay? It does happen. And in fact, I used to have a bumper sticker in my office at Judicial Watch. Clinton happens, okay? Yeah. And Jerry hasn't been wrong about anything, including the birth certificate. The birth certificate is fraudulent. We're not afraid to say it. Larry Klayman's not afraid to say it. Mike Zulu, Sheriff Arpaio, investigated it. Jerry never said that Obama was born in Kenya, just that the birth certificate was fraudulent. But that being said, that's neither here nor there, is that I know Jerry to be an honest man. Now, he and an excellent writer, 22 books, 5 times New York Times bestsellers, and he's frankly never been proven substantially wrong in anything he's written. People make mistakes, all writers do from time to time, but he has been truthful, and he takes a line which I admire, much like myself. He tells it like he sees it, regardless of political correctness. And he writes for WorldNet Daily. At least he used to. I write for WorldNet Daily. And that's the kind of publication that is. It tells the story straight up. So when I started to defend Dr. Corsi, Roger, I think, felt threatened because he knew that he had done things when he worked for me on the campaign which were improper, to put it most diplomatically, and that I had been, and a lot of my property had been misappropriated by his staff and others, and it really hurt me financially. To this day, I haven't recovered from it, frankly. So, needless to say, I also didn't win the campaign. It hurt my campaign. It got off to a really bad start. I had to hire other campaign managers and whatever. But what you're seeing from Roger Stone is that he feels threatened, okay, because Larry Klayman is Jerry Corsi's lawyer, and he knows that Larry Klayman, has issues with what he did in the past, and also Caputo, who misappropriated, took property from me. And this is Roger's right-hand man, his yes man is Flack. And he's got other surrogates out there, too, like Cassandra Fairbanks that you saw last week. Unfortunately, I love Newsmax, and I'm frequently on there, and I write for it. I don't blame Newsmax, but they had Cassandra Fairbanks on there, and she's a less than classy, savory person, and she defamed Jerry Corsi. And she was put up to it undoubtedly by Roger. She admitted during that interview, I asked her, I said, have you talked to Roger? No, I'm meeting with him tomorrow.
She said that?
Oh, yeah. And then she says, and then I asked her, I said, do you know Julian Assange? Oh, yeah, I saw him in early January of this year, and I saw him last year as well. And she told Jerry Corsi, according to Jerry, months ago they had encountered each other in a restaurant in New York, that she had actually slept with Assange when she was visiting with him.
Let me pause you for a second, Larry, because I didn't know that Cassandra Fairbanks had said that she was going to speak to Roger. Why would Robert Mueller not want to speak to someone who has worked at Sputnik News, who is openly saying that she's communicating with Julian Assange? I thought this whole thing was supposed to be about Russian influence on the election via WikiLeaks. If she's communicating with them and working for a Russian news agency, why would she say that on television?
Because she's not very smart. Let's put it that way. You can watch the interview and you can tell she's not very smart. But I can assure you, in all likelihood, she's going to be visited by FBI agents. She's going to probably be hauled in front of Mueller's grand jury now. Obviously, they're going to talk to her since she said that, she met with Assange twice and she's very close to him. And according to what she told Jerry and others, she's intimate with him.
But why would she tell Dr. Corsi that? She was pretty negative on Dr. Corsi. It didn't seem like she has a personal relationship.
Oh, this is after the fact. This is many months ago.
Wow.
Okay. See, here's the nature of the beast, and it applies to a lot of people. And people need to understand it. Few people understand Washington and the way it interacts with the media as well as I do, Jason, you do. But very few people really understand that. You have a lot of young reporters out there. You have people that watch these internet sites and look at YouTube, and they drink the Kool-Aid. It's not their fault, but most people believe what they're told. They don't realize that it's false. But these people attach themselves to a cause, okay, because they want to be relevant, because they want to promote their website, because they want to promote their writing. And they use people like Roger Stone as a leg up, and Roger Stone uses people like Cassandra Fairbanks and Mike Caputo, for his own ends. And that's the way it works. And there are several people out there that attach themselves to these causes. I get calls all the time from people that want to be part of causes. And at this point, I'm careful because, I'm not their 15 minutes of fame. I'm here to get a job done and to restore this nation to the vision of our founding fathers that's collapsing as we speak. And our justice system has already collapsed. So this is the nature of the beast. They want their 15 minutes of fame. But moving on from this is the fact that, Cassandra Fairbanks defamed Jerry Corsi, called him a liar over and over again. Roger Stone has been on literally a publicity jihad against Jerry Corsi and me. He's defamed me as well as lawyer. And because he fears what's going to happen, and he's trying to draw money to his legal defense fund. That's why.
Well, that's speculation, right? I mean, that's an assumption.
Well, it's an assumption which, unfortunately, is the fact of life. Okay, that's the way it works. And I've been around long enough, as my grandmother used to say, I wasn't born yesterday. I've seen it many other times, okay? Right. And, it's only the first 100 years that give you difficulty. My grandmother used to say before she died, this was my other grandmother, Frida, Larry, I'm not scared of dying, at least I won't be aggravated anymore. But here's the bottom line here is that you see what Roger's doing with Jerry Corsi and his lawyer, me, is actually playing into Mueller's hands. It's counterproductive. He's been accused of threatening a witness, threatening to literally kill Randy Credico and his dog, okay, because he didn't want Randy Credico allegedly to testify in a certain way when he was called in front of congressional committees or Mueller's grand jury. That's called witness tampering. That's called obstruction of justice. Those are two of the counts in the 7-count indictment which Mueller filed against Roger Stone. Now, the other count is a count for perjury, for lying. Now, Jerry has not lied. The fact that at a few moments in time he couldn't remember anything, he went back to his office, looked on his computer, got the information, gave it to Mueller, amended his testimony, and that's why the indictment, the Stone indictment, effectively exonerates Jerry Corsi. It doesn't accuse him of any wrongdoing. To the contrary, it accuses Roger Stone of lying under oath and also witness tampering. Now, let me get to another point. I believe in justice. The fact that Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, James Baker, and the whole band of criminals, including James Clapper, who lied about mass surveillance to the Senate Intel Committee, and John Brennan, who did the same thing. The fact that they haven't been prosecuted because in Washington, D.C., generally only conservatives get prosecuted. It's a very leftist town, highly leftist. 99% voted for Obama and Clinton in that town. This doesn't bode well for Roger when he gets in front of a jury there. And also the judge, Amy Berman Jackson, is very liberal and very anti-Trump. So he's out there attacking Corsi, and he's digging himself a legal ditch, because what he's doing is he's compounding the allegations of Mueller, whether they're correct or not, that he lied under oath and he threatens witnesses. Because to be smearing Jerry Corsi the way he is, and it's also not legal to be intimidating a lawyer of a target in front of a grand jury for your own strategic reasons. That's not legal either. So it's not legal what he's doing with me, in that he is in fact cementing in the minds of anyone that watches this, and he's verifying in effect that he did the same thing with Credico, okay, and that he didn't tell the truth in the indictment. So this is the problem that Roger faces, and he thinks that he's smarter than everybody else. He thinks he can smart everybody. He is smart, but he's too smart for his own good. And you know what he's learning? That he's not as smart as he thinks he is. So over the last week, I was in court, Jason, during his arraignment. I wanted to observe what was going on behalf of Dr. Corsi because I'm representing him. I wanted to see if anything came up with regard to Dr. Corsi. I sat in. I was, led into the room before the reporters by an assistant of Chief Judge Burl Howe, who was very gracious to not make me stand in line, and I do have an interest there. But I was watched what was going on. Roger was very chastened. He basically just said, how do you plead? And his lawyer got up and said, innocent. And then a very bizarre thing happened. These lawyers, who don't have much of any experience in Washington, D.C. criminal defense practice, agreed that they would waive Roger's speedy trial. And Speedy Trial Act, he has a constitutional right under Sixth Amendment to be tried within a few months. That's the reason for that, is that, you don't want people to languish in jail, even though he's
like
not
the
in jail.
Bundys.
That's right. Yeah, right. And that's a whole nother story with the Bundys we can get into later. What happened there, where Judge Navarro, even though they wanted a speedy trial, overrode that. But here, Roger's lawyers were agreeing with Mueller's lawyers to do that. Now, why were Mueller's lawyers happy to do that? Because regardless, and see, this is the other thing where Roger's spinning it to raise money for his legal defense fund. And, he got a couple establishment senators on Capitol Hill to weigh in, Lindsey Graham and others. Everybody wants to get on the bandwagon. Okay, that's one of the reasons that I've said what I've said about people latching on to causes, including Lindsey Graham and others, is that it was quite legitimate, even though, we have fought Mueller. It's Jerry Corsi who's filed criminal complaints against Mueller. I did that for him. It's Jerry Corsi who brought civil suits for $350 million against Robert Mueller. You can see that at LarryKlayman.com or CorsiNation.com. It wasn't Roger that did this. He just, shoots his mouth, but we actually took action. But Mueller likes this delay because, you see, they, quote, legitimately, okay, with a target who's being indicted, went in a pre-dawn raid, doesn't justify 29 FBI agents or amphibious people if Roger's telling the truth, which, frankly, it's hard to imagine that he is, given his track record.
Well, we saw it on CNN. It seemed really over the top.
I didn't see any amphibious frogmen. I'm sorry.
Well, but that was in the back. I mean, it definitely seems like Robert Mueller's investigation in the FBI was way over the top.
It may be, but I might add, Jason, that Roger has a swimming pool, and he said he didn't swim. It's very unlikely that he doesn't swim. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that, is spin. It's spin that we used. And I remember, because when he was going to be my campaign consultant, I was sitting out there at his pool. He was smoking a cigar, saying that his two big heroes were Roy Cohn, the sleazy New York lawyer, and Hyman Roth, who played Meyer Lansky in The Godfather. Roger fashions himself as mafioso. Whether he is or not, I don't know, but this is the way he likes to think of himself. So what I'm talking about with this is you're giving Mueller time because he went in and seized a lot of evidence, computers, hard drives, emails, etc. And God knows what's on those emails. And it's very possible that Roger can now, with all this time, be subject to a supersedious indictment. That's an amended indictment with more counts, more alleged illegalities, or a new indictment. And frankly, it was stupid to agree to that. Roger would be better advised getting lawyers who know what they're doing. Okay, these lawyers I don't think have much, if any, criminal defense experience in Washington, D.C. In fact, the magistrate judge, Deborah Robinson, chided them for not getting local counsel so they could apply to become a member of the court for this case. And rather than attacking Jerry Corsi, who will likely be called as a witness in his prosecution, not because he wants to be, he's not happy to be a witness, but he is a witness. He's person number one in the indictment. And Jerry will tell the truth. And that's what you're required to do. And I don't care if all these criminals like Comey and everybody else are not prosecuted. It does not excuse you for not telling the truth under oath. That's the basis of our legal system. We impeached Clinton for not telling the truth about Monica Lewinsky and about Paula Jones. So if you're, what is good for the good is good, gander is good for the goose, is what I'm saying. So now let's see where we are right now. A week later, several days later, there was a status conference in front of Judge Amy Berman Jackson. Amy Berman Jackson is the judge that presides over the Paul Manafort case. She's highly leftist, very partisan. I've talked about her on your show before. She had the case that I filed against Hillary Clinton for wrongful death on Benghazi. She dismissed it on the eve of Memorial Day as a slap to our Gold Star parents. There was no legal basis to do it. We took it up on appeal. The D.C. Circuit, highly leftist, Obama and Clinton appointees, affirmed her decision. I tried to take it up to the Supreme Court. They didn't accept cert. You know, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he's a Democrat turned inside out. Roberts, God knows what, they have on him. He's made some really bizarre decisions, not just with regard to Obamacare, but also with regard to Planned Parenthood. He wouldn't hear a case involving that lately. And his colleagues, his conservative colleagues, actually criticized him for that. But she's the judge from hell for Roger Stone. Okay, and that's probably why the chief judge assigned the case to her, because she put a gag order on Manafort. Now, Manafort is a mild-mannered guy. He's not like Roger. He's not boastful. He's not bombastic. He's not in your face. He doesn't threaten people that we know of. Many years ago, I met Manafort, too. Manafort, whatever he did, is a gentleman. Roger's not a gentleman. And so during that status conference, she says, I'm paraphrasing, you can find the transcript, I'm sure, on the internet, is that, Mr. Stone, you're doing yourself a disservice. She's saying, in effect, you're digging yourself a bigger ditch. You're not only, with all of this roadshow and publicity and hype and bravado and attacks, you're not only polluting the jury pool, but you're making statements that could wind up incriminating you further in this trial. Namely, she didn't say it, threatening witnesses. He, in effect, is threatening Jerry Corsi, and he's trying to smear Jerry Corsi into not telling the truth if he's ever called to testify. And he's trying to defame me, the lawyer of Jerry Corsi, for his own ends. So she said, you got to be very careful, because I'm going to submit briefs. I want briefs in 1 week as to why you shouldn't be gagged. Okay,
this was yesterday.
This was just yesterday. And so Roger goes on Tucker Carlson last night and continues with his public relations campaign. He was a bit more restrained. And then he had his lackey, Mike Caputo, come on right after that, who, by the way, was my so-called press secretary during the campaign, as I said. I mean, this guy's no real press secretary, just a friend of Roger Stone, but in terms of his ability. But this was also very stupid. Now, there's a link here, too, and people should understand that. Why on Tucker Carlson? Because one of the people that is out there smearing Jerry right now is one of Roger Stone's surrogates, is a reporter called Chuck Ross, who's written at least 2 articles which have effectively attacked Jerry Corsi. It just so happens that Roger Stone writes for the Daily Caller, no coincidence. Just so happens that the founder of the Daily Caller is Tucker Carlson. In fact, I think he still owns part of it, if not all of it. And no coincidence that Rogers immediately put on Tucker Carlson's show right after he gets out of this status conference with Judge Jackson. And I believe that Chuck Ross was put up to do this by Roger as well, to attack Jerry. So this is where we are. And I want people to understand this, because I'm telling this full story because they need the real stone cold truth about Roger Stone. Roger Stone fashions himself as the dirty trickster of all time. There was a Netflix documentary called Get Me Roger Stone. You can find it out there on Netflix and watch it, where he brags about the dirty tricks that he has performed, brags about, his love of Richard Nixon. And Nixon did some good things. I like Nixon too.
I don't like Nixon.
But Watergate was despicable. It was a crime, and Nixon deserved what he got. Okay? And it's ironic that years later, Roger's coming out of courthouses flashing the Nixon victory sign when, except for the fact that Nixon was president, he would have been indicted, and the fact that Nixon left in disgrace. If that's who Roger wants to tie himself to, those pictures will be shown to the jury in all likelihood as well when it comes time for his trial in July, August, or October of this year. So he thinks he's smarter, Jason, and sometimes smart people make major mistakes. Nixon thought he was smarter too. You saw what happened to him. And this is the full story of what's going on. So come this Friday, we're going to be filing an amicus brief on behalf of Jerry Corsi.
What does that mean, Larry, for people who aren't familiar with amicus
It's a
brief?
friend of the court brief, okay? And I'm no big fan of the judge for the reasons that I stated, but she's right here. And you cannot have a circus like this and go to trial. I don't know that Manafort deserved a gag order. It's generally unconstitutional. But Roger Stone certainly does. And in this case, with regard to my client, he's effectively intimidating a material witness that could be subpoenaed in front of the jury in Roger Stone's case. And he is threatening a witness, in effect, and he's threatening a witness's lawyer, okay, intimidating a witness's lawyer, all of which is not legal. So, yes, he should be gagged with regard to this type of conduct. And the judge said, look, you want to talk about immigration, you want to talk about the birds and the bees, you want to talk about global warming, you want to talk about who's going to win the Super Bowl, that's fine, go ahead and do that. But you're not going to be talking about this trial.
Well, let me ask you a couple questions, Larry.
Guaranteed that he will be gagged in that regard.
Right. Okay. So I did watch this press conference that Roger Stone held the other day, I guess, after the arraignment. Owen Schroyer said a few words, and this was, I guess, put on by InfoWars. And somebody had asked Roger Stone specifically about this allegation having to do with intimidating Randy Credico. And I did feel while watching it that Roger was speaking very candidly about his own ongoing criminal trial. At very least, it wasn't the type of thing I would expect somebody to do while they're in so much jeopardy. I want to talk a little bit about Randy Credico. Roger's response to the question.
Let me just interject here. It goes back to the point that sometimes you're twice too smart. Okay?
Yeah.
You think you're smarter than everybody else, but you're not.
Well, he definitely didn't help himself, I don't think, during that press conference, because he basically said, well, Randy was threatening and intimidating me. So he was sort of saying it's tit for tat. And I guess in certain situations, that's okay. I mean, when you're in a Twitter war with somebody who is just a troll, it's one thing to, spit venom at them in response to their venom. But obviously, it's not a legal defense. I don't think it was the smartest thing for Roger to say during a press conference, and my thought when I heard him say it was that it might, in fact, come back to bite him. But what's going on with this guy, Randy Credico? He interviewed Julian Assange on WBAI radio. Everybody is so concerned about, who spoke to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, but here we have Randy Credico, who we have an open broadcast. I mean, the thing that's troubling for me about all of this, Larry, and I'm not diminishing anything that you've said. I understand having these types of differences with people. It happens. The thing that concerns me is that Robert Mueller's investigation has gotten so far afield from what it's actually supposed to be about. everybody is getting distracted and bogged down by all this. And what it's really done is it's destroyed InfoWars. It's destroyed one of the main focal points that was really important for getting Donald Trump elected. And it feels to me very much like a disruption campaign executed by Robert Mueller.
I don't disagree with you. Look, I've been the strongest person against Mueller. Okay, Jason, you know that. I mean, I'm going to bring him in front of the citizens' grand juries. I'm going to bring these other people in front of citizens' grand juries.
Right.
We're going to seek indictments, convictions, sentences, and seek to carry them out peacefully and legally. Hopefully, the president will enforce them. So it's I am the adversary of Mueller, and he knows that, and I think that's one of the reasons that Jerry Corsi, is being treated, at least for now, in a way that seems that he's not going to be indicted. That's part of it, because a good offense is a good defense. Maybe we'll see that in the Super Bowl tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that's not the issue. Okay. The issue is that Roger Stone is not how he sells himself. It's not what he appears to be. And if you lie under oath, I don't care whatever your excuse, you're going to pay the price. If you threaten a witness, you're going to pay the price. That's not what our legal system is all about. 80 people died during the Clinton years, in and around the Clinton various 40-plus scandals. Do I believe they were all just coincidental and law of average? No. They weren't held accountable, okay? But that's obviously illegal too, And, so you got to be true to what you believe. And yes, I believe that Mueller's on a witch hunt. Yes, Jerry believes that too. We have resisted Robert Mueller. But I also have a client to defend. So I'm not just special prosecutor with Larry Klayman, my show on RadioAmerica.com. I'm special defense counsel with Larry Klayman as well. I'm wearing two hats right now. So what I'm saying is, in the context of defending Jerry Corsi, because if Jerry Corsi goes down, then we have no system of justice anymore. If Roger Stone goes down, and if what's pled in the complaint is correct, then Roger Stone's getting what he deserves, because you cannot lie under oath. You cannot intimidate witnesses. And I'll say it straight up. Now, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and we don't wish him any harm. I've never attacked him. And the fact that I tell you the story about what went on with my Senate campaign, I walked away from it. I hope never to see him or ever have anything to do with him again, because I know how sleazy Roger Stone is. I had personal experience with it. And frankly, I don't want to associate with those kinds of people. But the American public is being sold a bill of goods here, which isn't accurate. And even the raid, okay, yes, 29 people, 29 FBI agents, too much, okay? But if in fact they were gathering evidence to use for the trial and they had a warrant, they could have gone in a different way. They did not need to give any advance notice to Roger's lawyers to give him the opportunity to destroy evidence and throw it into Biscayne Bay. And that's not being told either.
Well, but I think the issue...
Wait. I'm not going to be part of, the Kool-Aid of any movement for whatever ulterior purpose. Let's deal with Mueller on his own terms with the witch hunt that he's done. I'm a big supporter of the president. I love the president. By the way, the president disassociated himself from Roger Stone during the campaign. And I'm sorry that, sometimes stuff wears off, odor kind of goes in another direction here. But the fact is that you cannot justify that, and we have to be true to principles. Let me tell you another story, okay? Real quickly, and then it's your show, okay, but I'm hogging it.
No, it's okay.
Okay, way back when I started Judicial Watch, it's in my book, Horse, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. Again, you can get it at WND.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com. I never made a penny off that book, so I'm not promoting it for any reason. But when I first came to prominence at Judicial Watch, which I founded, I uncovered the Chinagate scandal and a communist Chinese spy by the name of John Wong that Clinton had inserted at the Commerce Department.
That's huge, by the way.
And Judge Royce Lamberth ordered his deposition. Larry Klayman got on the map. I was the darling of the conservative movement of the Republicans. Who is Larry Klayman? Was the story. And I was invited to a party given by Barbara and Ted Olson. May Barbara rest in peace. She
died
on
September 11th, right?
September 11th. And, I was on every TV show, 3 times a day. It gets your ego. I don't care anymore. Jason. I just want to be on with people like you who tell the truth. Okay, crowdsource the truth. I don't need to be on CNN or MSNBC or Fox. People know me. They know what I do. 15 minutes of fame, it wears off really fast. But after that, and after I came to prominence by effectively uncovering the Chinagate scandal, I all of a sudden, had to take note of what was going on. I was a public figure at that point. Now, Newt Gingrich at that point was Speaker of the House, and he had been uncovered doing some shady things with this foundation. And there was a report that came out of the House Ethics Committee, which said that he had committed ethical infractions.
Newt had.
Yes, and I took the position that Newt, at that time, this was just 2 weeks after I became famous, should resign from the speakership. He could continue to be, a congressman from Georgia if that's what the people wanted, but he shouldn't be, the titular head of the Republican Party, third in line to the presidency. So that wasn't a popular position to take. That wasn't in my self-interest to take that, because I had all these conservative supporters. I had Republican supporters that were happy with my, cases against the Clintons, and that I uncovered what then was thought to be maybe one of the biggest scandals in American history, if not the biggest scandal. But I said what I thought was right, because I thought I had to be consistent. And if conservatives are going to have the moral standing to hold the left accountable, then we need to hold our own accountable as well. We have to keep our own house in order. Now, before I came out with that, I was invited to a Wednesday breakfast meeting put on by Grover Norquist, who runs Americans for Tax Reform. Now, Grover is a Republican lobbyist. Grover is someone who plays both sides. He always attaches himself to powerful people. It helps raise money. It helps his prominence, etc. Now, Grover's not a bad guy. I'm not attacking Grover, but he disinvited me after I came out against Newt Gingrich, which was his benefactor. He was his sugar daddy, to his group, and helped Grover raise money for his group. I was disinvited. And I showed up anyway. And I took the stage and I said, look, fellow conservatives, these are all the conservative groups in Washington, And I said, if we are going to have the moral authority to take on Bill Clinton and to get him impeached and to remove him from office for all of his high crimes and misdemeanors and everything else, then we have to practice what we preach. And that's why I said what I said with regard to Newt Gingrich, because we have to hold our own accountable as well. And I walked off. And that's the way I am. And that's who Larry Klayman is. Take it or leave it.
Right.
But I don't do things to position myself to raise money or to curry favor or anything else. And, I'll do what I think is right. So I hope people do, get my book. There's still some copies left after all these years, and read it, because, and not to scratch my back, but it's true. It honestly is true. There's no other Larry Klayman today. There is not, because nearly all these lawyers, including Trump's lawyers, they always calculate in, how's it going to affect me? How's it going to affect my legal practice? Giuliani, Sekulow, president's being dragged to the guillotine, as they're out there happy to go on Fox News and other places. They haven't done one legal thing against Mueller, but yet I have, and Jerry Corsi has. So, I'll pit myself up against Roger Stone any day of the week, but people should know who Roger Stone is, frankly. And he's not worthy walking the plank for, let me tell you that.
Let me ask you this, Larry, because again, just going back to what's been, actually said, and I can't get past this feeling, Randy Credico is a guy who's been at the center of all this for so long, but yet there's been relatively little said about him when we compare it to Dr. Corsi or Roger Stone. But as I said, he's a guy who has spoken with Julian Assange. He's having all these fights with Roger Stone. I just can't get past this feeling, Larry, because even right now in our comments here on YouTube, Dynamex, who's basically a daily watcher of Crowdsource the Truth, is lamenting the fact that all of this is disrupting this so-called truth community. I don't like the term truth community because I think it's a broad community that's been infiltrated by a lot of people who don't tell the truth. But what about that, Larry? What if this is some complicated operation somehow orchestrated by Robert Mueller to fracture InfoWars, to get viewers of Crowdsource the Truth fighting with each other, to have you here commenting on Roger Stone rather than working on all the really important legal cases that you're working on, like the Bundys, and obviously Mueller knows you're after him.
Let me make it clear. We didn't start it. I'm just simply defending my clients.
Yes.
I'm a defense lawyer here. We didn't start it.
Yes.
And we've always made it clear that we didn't wish Roger any harm. We didn't. He's the one who's taking this offensive, okay? And when that happens and you do that with Larry Klayman, his client, Larry Klayman is one of the reasons I like Trump. I'm not going to sit around and watch it happen.
Is there a chance for Roger to reel this back, Larry? Is there any way this can be reconciled as far as turning off the fight between Roger?
Roger won't reel it back. That's not Roger. Roger will continue to press ahead, and he will, even if he's gagged, he'll use his surrogates like Mike Caputo and others to do stuff under the table, to sliver about. He prides himself on that. That's his modus operandi, the penultimate dirty trickster who exists by cover of darkness. And so watch that Get Me Roger Stone video, which actually was, frankly, an invitation by Mueller to indict him. Got him his fame, but that was also incredibly stupid. And Roger thinks that he's going to outsmart anybody, and maybe he'll get a pardon in the end.
Why is Get Me Roger Stone an invitation to be indicted? He didn't admit to anything illegal there.
He brags about the dirty tricks and everything else.
But
he makes
dirty tricks
of interest.
Dirty tricks aren't crimes, are they?
Well, but it piques people's interest, doesn't it? Dirty tricks can be crimes.
It's so interesting, Larry, because I don't know if I've actually discussed this in detail, but I first met Dr. Corsi at a screening party that Jack Prosobic put on for this very movie, Get Me Roger Stone. And Roger was there on the phone. People have seen Roger and Dr. Corsi appearing together on Crowdsource the Truth. And I just feel like, Larry, there are so many deceptive operations going on to infiltrate each of our, inner circles and confuse us and all this.
Probably are, Jason. You're right. And they call you a conspiracy theorist too, but you're usually right too.
Well, and that's the nicest thing they say about me, Larry.
And you've got to look. If you're a lawyer, you're not there to think happy thoughts and tiptoe through the tulips. I'm not. What was that guy many years ago? Tiny Tim. I'm not Tiny Tim. I'm Big Larry. Okay. But I mean that literally. But the reality is that you have to be a realist here. Yes, and they are trying to divide and conquer. There's no question about it. But we didn't want to take Roger on. We didn't want to do anything to him. But he's trying to harm my client and me. So look, we've got to defend ourselves.
Right. Well, I hope Roger will take a more, I don't know what the word is, but hopefully things can improve. This conspiracy theorist term, Larry, it's something that's hurled around quite frequently, but I mean, I'm just analyzing the document, and I agree with you. I think Dr. Corsi was correct in his analysis that this birth certificate that was presented by the White House as a PDF document, I don't know where Barack Obama was born, but I can tell you that this PDF has some really strange anomalies about it. Just right here, cursory glance, if people haven't looked at this, we've got an ink stamp from August 8th, 1961, and this looks very much like the date stampers I can remember seeing in public school in the 1980s, where you'd roll the rubber treads on it to set the date, dip it in a pad of ink, and stamp it. So I cannot fathom how that low technology rubber stamper device could print AUG-8196 in red and magically have a 1 appear in black. And that's just one of the numerous anomalies. So few people take the time to actually examine evidence and form their own opinion. They'll just hear CNN say, oh, well, Dr. Corsi is a conspiracy theorist, or Wikipedia says this or that about Larry, and then they take that and they run with it. And I'm experiencing this myself. So I'm doing my best to sort of try to figure out what would be motivating these people. I mean, I see these strange things happening, this fight with Randy Credico. I'm actually privy to some private communications between Randy Credico and a person that people can guess at that I'm not supposed to talk about, but I have my own opinions about Randy Credico and what he might be up to. But between him and Cassandra Fairbanks, it just seems like pot stirring that's not, and Roger Stone, pot stirring that's not in their best interests, and I can't imagine why they would do that. I don't think these are stupid people, so it just causes me to wonder why they would do that.
Sometimes when you're the target, or you're in the eye of the hurricane, whatever you want to say, you're not thinking clearly, and you should take a time out and go for a long walk. You know, maybe take a tranquilizer, okay? Yeah. But these people react and they don't think it through. And people like Cassandra Fairbanks wants to be relevant. She wants to promote her website. And who is Cassandra Fairbanks? She's nobody, okay? So that's what I'm talking about. People try to latch on to these causes. And, you know, I respect people. I don't think I'm better than anybody else, but this woman is very low class. And, you know, you can watch the interview on Newsmax and, you know, just Google her and find out about her and you'll see what I'm talking about. But here's the thing, Jason, is that, you know, I'm not concerned about Randy Credico. I'm not concerned about all this side stuff. I'm concerned with defending my client, Jerry Corsi. Right. I'm concerned about keeping my eye on the ball and holding Special Counsel Mueller accountable and the people in and around him and the Clintons and the Obamas and the Comeys and the rest of them, as I've done through all of my legal career.
And all of this is taking us away from that. That's what bothers me about it.
It bothers me, too, on the conservative side. You're not this way, too, but there are so many hypocrites on the conservative side, you know, people that are two-faced. And I've named a few of them on your show before, okay, whether it's Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson, whoever. Most of them are on Fox, frankly. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, is that Hannity, when Jerry was on, makes a special point of saying, of course, I never believed that Obama was born in Kenya. Okay? He didn't have to say that.
Hannity said that? But yeah. Dr. Corsi has never said that.
He's never said that, okay?
Does Hannity believe that a rubber stamper can print in two different colors?
Here's what they do. O'Reilly was that way, too. I never cared for O'Reilly. He didn't want to talk about Vince Foster, the fact that he was likely killed. You know, wouldn't talk about it. Because not only are they handcuffed by the owners of Fox, the Murdochs, who are liberals, and you see Fox moving late as of late, you know, Napolitano's become anti-Trump and Shepard Smith, and there's a whole bunch of them over there. Martha McCullum swings both ways, you know, politically. It's not the same place it used to be, but is that Republicans will use it as a throwaway line, you know, whether it's with regard to the birth certificate or whether it's with regard to the Bundys. Hannity also abandoned the Bundys, you know, when Klayman used the word Negro, he wasn't racist. He didn't mean it in a racist way. Martin Luther King referred to him himself that way. So that's what he thought the correct word was. He was equating himself to the way Negroes had been mistreated in the Old South.
He is an old guy. I mean, he kind of is a little bit set in his ways, kind of living out there in the desert on the ranch.
Well, they looked it up in a dictionary, okay? Yeah. So, you know, black person, Negro,
well,
black.
It's like my grandmother used to call a refrigerator the Frigidaire, and it's like, what is that?
After the word Negro, Negroes wanted to be called blacks. Then they didn't like that, and they became African Americans. Okay, fine. No problem. We respect African Americans. I have many as my clients and friends, really good friends, like Armstrong Williams. But the fact is, these conservatives will take a crack at it, you know, to show their credibility, you see. But Jerry Corsi and I and you will tell it like it is, without regard to political correctness. And most of these hypocrites, you know, in the conservative movement, try to play it both ways. So-called conservative movement.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of my guests, like you and Charles and even close friends of mine, definitely seem to hold Fox News and others in higher regard than I do. I personally think that Fox News has always been just a corporate-owned, advertiser-driven, regular kind of news show, and it's everywhere.
And you.
Yep.
And 17% owned by the Saudi government.
Exactly. and I don't really have any trust in them. I found this interview.
And most of these hypocrites.
Whoops, where was that coming from?
That's me.
That's weird. That was from.
Yes,
I got something else putting out audio here.
I think it's the deep state, that's surveilling us. So we'll see.
No, I was trying to get something going here. Okay, I know what the problem is. Yeah, it's just, we got Ari Melber here. I mean, remember this interview that he did with Dr. Corsi was one of the first to come out. And he just basically says, let's see if we can get, we can't get it. He says, Robert Mueller doesn't leak is the very first thing that he says in this interview with Dr. Corsi. So it feels much less to me like an actual interview with Dr. Corsi and much more like an opportunity for MSNBC to subliminally inject their takeaway information. Robert Mueller doesn't leak, here's conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I've talked to reporters in the last few weeks when I discussed obvious leaks by Robert Mueller, and they looked like they were going to have a heart attack, some young reporters,
right?
Because they obviously had been leaking to them.
And we've presented evidence with your assistance through your Freedom of Information Act against Robert Mueller's special counsel office. You have the evidence, prima facie evidence, the emails between Peter Carr and all of these journalists, the suggestions of private meetings. The leaking is undeniable, and the very first thing that Ari Melber says is a contradiction of fact. So I've become very fascinated with this fact-free environment where people are just pushing out all this fake crap and then accusing people who are telling the truth of being liars. It's insidious.
It's going on all over the world. It's going on in Israel too with Prime Minister Netanyahu. It's everywhere. Okay, I mean, he's accused. He's going to be indicted because his wife decided to hire a caterer rather than using the in-house cook. I mean, this is what the left does. Okay, this is what they do. Okay, and I'm not saying Netanyahu is a choir boy. There are a few Israeli prime ministers that are. Many of them have been caught doing some bad stuff, and I'm a big supporter of Israel. I'm a Zionist. But, this is the world we live in, Jason, and you have to take it. But I'll tell you something. When I was a young lawyer, I used to tell people, do you want to hire an Air Force that strikes the planes before they get off the ground? Hire Larry Klayman Law Firm. I'm like the Israelis. You want to hit me? I'll hit you 100-time fold going back. And that's the only way you can do it. If you want to play it straight with me, you're my friend. If you don't want to play it straight with me, you're my enemy.
Right. And for people who are interested in supporting this fight against Robert Mueller, I always encourage people to go to freedomwatchusa.org and to financially support Larry's efforts. I feel he's doing very important work, and I'm troubled by the infighting amongst former colleagues. I really do believe it's distracting us from the bigger issue, which is that we've got a criminal Department of Justice that is doing so many things that are so over the top. I am really anticipating Larry's citizen grand juries. I'm hopeful that they can be effective in at least raising people's awareness, if not actually resulting in Robert Mueller being brought to justice. I do not think they should have sent 27 FBI agents to arrest a 66-year-old guy who was sleeping in his house. I think they could have sent 2 and still prevented him from throwing away evidence.
Let me say one other thing, Jason. I'm 67, okay? I don't play the age game. I feel young, okay?
Yeah.
That's bullshit too, okay?
Well, even if he was 30, I don't think we need...
Roger works out every day on Miami Beach, okay? He's in great shape. He's going to live to 100, okay? He may be living to 100 in jail, but he's going to live to 100, okay? So
Yikes.
that's bullshit too.
Well, I hope that people will go to freedomwatchusa.org, and of course, people who want to support Dr. Corsi's legal defense can go to corsination.com. Larry's book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment, is available at Amazon. It's available at Barnes & Noble. And if you become a financial supporter of freedomwatchusa.org for $250 or more, Larry's going to send you his entire 4-volume work of books that he's authored. Larry, I'm always delighted to have you on the show and hear your insights. Was there anything you wanted to leave our audience with
No,
before we
I
wrap it
want
up?
to thank you, Jason, because you give an opportunity to tell the full story in an hour. You are a great investigative journalist. You're also a
Thank you.
tremendous interviewer. I always joke with you, better than Barbara Walters, and you're my friend. Okay, and you know it's important to have people that are loyal that you trust, and that's very important today because yes, I don't want to see the infighting either. But when people go after you and they're diverting you from your mission to
I
bring
know.
about justice for the Clintons, you have to respond. Okay, you cannot take a knife in the back. And you know, in terms of Stone, I'll call it like it is. He's trying to put a knife in the back of Jerry Corsi. He didn't do anything to him, and he doesn't wish him any harm.
I know the feeling, Larry, of needing to defend yourself against false accusations. It's amazing how persistent some of the most ridiculous ones can be, and how frequently those proponents of such false information keep coming back to the same stupid
And
crap.
and I'm sorry, and I want to say one other thing. I'm sorry that InfoWars was dragged into this. You know, I've been on InfoWars frequently. I like Alex. I like I'm
Owen,
having the block right. Owen. Yeah, they're nice people. They even said
David
that.
Knight.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that Roger dragged them into it too, because he's dragging them down as well.
I mean, again, my fear is that this is a plan that was orchestrated by someone like Robert Mueller, not necessarily Robert Mueller himself, but people who want to incapacitate InfoWars, people who want to create disruption through this social media infrastructure where we really are gaining ground in terms of concerned citizens getting firsthand information, you know, people who want to know the facts, people who want to formulate an opinion about you, whether they agree with what you're saying or disagree with what you're saying. This isn't a 5-minute soundbite where I lead it in with Ari Melber's talking points about how great Robert Mueller is. So I think social media is becoming a really valuable resource for thinking people who really want to get to the root of some of these issues. And I also think that Robert Mueller, the State Department Global Engagement Center, NewsGuard, the Council on Foreign Relations, all of these things are working to try to shut it down. And I hate that.
Jason, we're in a revolution, okay? And sometimes the people that are the most dangerous to those patriots that are moving forward to, in fact, save liberty and justice for our country are those that are to the right and left of you. They're called Benedict Arnold, okay? And they're more dangerous than the people that you're taking on frontally. And that's what needs to be kept in mind here.
Yeah, yeah. Larry, thanks for that insight. Thanks for spending your time with me here on a Saturday. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to remind our viewers that Crowdsource the Truth is a viewer-sponsored news resource, and I couldn't continue to bring everyone these types of interviews without your financial support. Some of these similar types of attacks against me have been designed specifically to defund and deplatform Crowdsource the Truth. Please help me in having that not happen by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and becoming a sponsor, or you can make a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. I want to thank my guest, Larry Klayman of freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, everybody's going to be watching this really closely. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. And I can only say to our listeners, we really need a Jason Goodman. You are integral to the survival of our country.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. I hope everybody has a good night. I'll see you tomorrow for Sunday with Charles.